Hi everyone, it's Eric from ecotman12.blogspot.com and welcome to my review of The Dark Knight Returns Part 2. Now, as well as doing technology videos, gaming videos, I do like watching movies as well, so I thought why not share my thoughts with you for The Dark Knight Returns. Now, let me quickly talk to you about the first Dark Knight Returns before I actually get into the second. I'm just going to be very, very brief since there's already lots of reviews for it out and it's already been out for quite a few months. So, Dark Knight Returns Part 1, I didn't know what to make of it the first time I saw it. First time I saw it, was it good, was it bad, was it okay? I didn't really know what to make out of it. So I read the second half of the comic to see what would happen in the next movie. That was great, and then I'd read the first two issues of which is basically the first half of the comic, and I really did like that first half of the comic. The news reports were really getting on my nerves, but in the movies they really seemed to solve the problems out, especially in The Dark Knight Returns Part 2. And it was actually a much better sort of a movie when I watched it the second time around, the first part. I really did like it a lot more. It's probably because I read the comic book and I sort of know what Batman's thinking in his head when he's doing this stuff. And it's also very rewarding to see the sort of the art style in the comic books come to life in the actual movie, because literally it does. All the sort of popular and memorable sort of like concept art and art inside the comic books is actually put in the movie but animated and looks really good. So I was really happy to actually see that translated into the movies. So after I watched the Dark Knight Returns Part 1, my second viewing, really did love it. I'd give it a 7 out of 10. Now, The Dark Knight Returns Part 2. I'm just going to come out and tell you guys this movie is not coming out until near the end of this month. However, I managed to see it early, and that's because Amazon, I'm not sure if you heard about this, but Amazon accidentally pushed out The Dark Knight Returns Part 2 as a digital download earlier than they should have. They didn't mean to do that, but and they did pull it down later on, but quite a few people, including me, actually downloaded it, and we watched it. And this was absolutely amazing movie. I really did like it. It's like I was speechless after I saw it. It was really good. It's like when you just watch the first 5 minutes, the whole atmosphere seems like a movie that would normally have a budget to sort of feel like a movie that would go on the cinema or something. It was really that good. The atmosphere was great. The action was just as great. You thought that the action in The Dark Knight Returns Part 1 was really violent. You have no idea. The action in The Dark Knight Returns Part 2 is so much more brutal, so much more violent, and it's like a bloodbath compared to the first one, and the first one did have quite a lot of blood as well. I love when Batman throws his batarangs, instead of like just hitting someone's hand and falling off, like throwing a little Lego brick at them, it literally gets stuck in their hand, and in some other character's case, gets stuck in the eye. I'm not going to say who. But that was actually really good how it actually happens, and there is blood there. They don't skimp on the blood at all. So apart from the atmosphere being great, it's like the music was also great. The music did not have as much memorable tunes as the first one did, but some of those do make a return, and some are more jazzed up and do sound a little nicer to listen to and have more of an epic sort of feel and climax sort of the tone to it. So that was really good. So yes, I really liked that. And another thing, I'm trying not to give any spoilers here, but another thing which was also great is that there's many scenes and times in the actual comic book where I was like, what just happened there? Oh, I don't know this happened, I don't know how that happened. They actually make it much more clear in the movie. So when you watch the movie, then go back to the comics, you're like, oh, I understand this now. From the movie explained it properly, so I understand what's going on in the comic book. I never really understood what was going on in the comic book the first time I actually saw it. Really, I did not. When I first read the comic book, there were many times I was like, what just happened there? Did Batman do this? Did the Thug just do this himself? What happened? And the action, how did Batman just escape that right there? It wasn't very clear, the comic book. Now, it is an older comic book, and the comic book does try to explain itself a lot, but it doesn't really prevail at it at all. It still leaves many unanswered questions. So I think they could have done better in the comic book like that, but hey, this is an older comic and it was the start like a sort of fresh reboot for Batman, so I'm not complaining. I'm just saying the comic wasn't as clear as I would have liked it to be. Now let me tell you about some of the things I did not like about this movie, and one was the Joker. He looks fine, I could sort of accept the way he looks, the new way he looks, but what I did not like at all was his voice. It did have some good moments and stuff, and I wasn't thinking throughout the whole movie that, oh, this is like just a phone, he's ruining the whole thing for me. Because it wasn't, but the lines that he's delivering sometimes were not as good. And how Joker playfully says things like, excuse me, out of my way, smacks people out of the way, stuff like that. It just seemed a little like how I would act with my voice if I was trying to record a voiceover. It didn't seem natural. Many other voice actors, like Paul Walker, who does Batman's voice in this, he doesn't really seem like he's reading from something. However, the person that does the Joker's voice, who was in Person of Interest, if you've actually seen that show, he didn't really deliver that well on Joker's lines. So that's one thing I didn't really like. And there was also a couple of times where Batman is being shot at, and he should obviously get shot by that with the amount of bullets that are going by, and he's like wounded and he's still like slowly trying to move away, and the bullets don't even hit him. There was one scene in particular in this movie where I really noticed that. I was like, no, he cannot have survived that. Either that or the people shooting at him have terrible aim. So to tell you the truth, there wasn't really much negatives in this movie. Most of it was positives. It is only about an hour and 15 minutes, so it's not like really long, so it doesn't drag. And one thing I loved is that there's news reports still in this movie that were more relevant. The first one had relevant ones as well, but it's had quite a few there that just seemed, it had quite a few news reports that just seemed to drag and just waste time. The news reports in this were actually quite good, and there was less of them. By the second half of the movie, they literally stopped the news reports until near the very, very end, which was good to sort of sum up the movie and let everyone know what's going on. It's sort of like, that was very good right there. But the news reports just really tend to slow down the pacing of the movie and the comic books, and it was worse in the comic books, because while the whole action scene was going on in the comic books, the news reports would like be right in the middle of it, and they would be constantly interrupting it, and I hated that so much. They really got on my nerves. But in this, it's like the pacing is like very consistent, and if the news reports aren't like jamming them right in the middle and cutting through, then it's great. They never make the news reports like cut through into the action sequences or when there's a really good scene going on, which was great. The Joker was very, very dark in this movie, despite me not really liking his voice that much. He was very dark, and he was a very, very sort of well done, I'd say. He wasn't like amazing, and his voice wasn't the best, but if his dialogue was done by someone else, like Mark Hamill, for example, I could see it working. His dialogue was great, he was just miscast. That's all I can really say about Joker. And Batman, normally I always hated him in the comic books. He didn't really seem like a likable character. It's like you're not really with him on this. They didn't do a really good job of explaining that. And I'm not alone with this. There's some people which probably, there's some people that actually like the way he was actually explained, but there's quite a few people, including me, who did not like the way he was explained and the way he was actually, they actually explained him as a character. So that was a little downside right there, but they've actually sorted that out right here in this movie right here. They've really sorted that problem out, and I really did like Batman as a character. So that was absolutely great. I loved Batman as a character in this movie. And Paul Walker, I didn't really like his voice in the first Dark Knight Returns, but in the Dark Knight Returns Part 2, I really did like his voice a lot better. I don't know if I was just used to it, but it seemed like he really upped his performance in this movie in particular compared to the previous version. There was also someone else I'd like to talk about. There was this new Robin, who is obviously a girl. It's very strange the way she just came about in the first movie. Very, very strange. It was kind of completely pointless. And when Batman's fighting, how she just runs around, flips around and stuff, and starts beating up some bad guys right from the get-go. It's like, what? They haven't given us any sort of story from her. Has she done gymnastics or something? What has she done? How could she do all these flips and kicks, start fighting people, and when all she's done is put on a costume? If that's the case, then any of us can just put on a costume and then just go and start fighting crime. So I didn't really like what they did there. The Dark Knight Returns Part 2 is taking place a few weeks after the first movie, so therefore Batman said he's going to be training her, and he has trained her, and you can sort of see that as well. So it wasn't a really complaint in the second movie, and I did like her character much better in the second movie as well. She wasn't annoying, she wasn't like getting in the way of some stuff. So yeah, I thought in Part 2 she did much better. And the ending was also really, really good in this movie, the climax. I saw what was coming since I read the comic book, but for those of you that haven't, you might be wondering, is this the end, or something like that? And to tell you the truth, I think the trailer kind of spoiled that for you anyway. Now, like I said, I'm trying to be very brief in this review. I'm not trying to give out any spoilers or anything like that, but I am going to tell you guys that this movie is not for kids. Do not let your kids see it. In the US, you've got a PG-13 rating, which you got with many movies, but for us, in the UK, it's more specific with this rating. It's a 15 rating, so that should give you an idea of how old you should be in order to watch this movie. So this movie is definitely not for kids. It wasn't aimed even for 1 second to be for kids. And by the way, if you thought The Dark Knight Returns Part 1 was really violent, like the most violent out of all the DC Comics movies, well, that one's time has come and gone. The Dark Knight Returns Part 2 is the most violent out of all the cartoons and comic book movies I've seen. Anime does not count, but cartoons, it's one of the most graphic cartoons you'll ever see. It's really got an adult tone to it, and it doesn't seem like it's been skimping on anything. They really showed a lot of gore and a lot of blood, and the violence was really, really gritty. So what score would I give this movie overall out of 10? I would give it happily a 9 out of 10. The reason why I don't give it a 10 out of 10 is because, like I said, Joker's voice wasn't the greatest, and that was pretty much it really. I think if the Joker's voice was done better by a better voice actor, I probably would have given it that perfect 10. The other little complaints I had for the movie are really picking hairs. But yeah, I think the Joker should have had a better voice actor. But apart from that, the movie is absolutely great. I really loved it. When the end credits just rolled, I was speechless. I was like, wow, this was amazing. And normally Batman Under the Red Hood was my most favorite comic book movie, but now The Dark Knight Returns Part 1 and 2, since they're obviously one comic book movie, those two are my favorite number one comic book movie. I know it's longer than Under the Red Hood, and Under the Red Hood was still great. I still love that one. I still recommend you guys all check that out. But The Dark Knight Returns was actually a really, really well done and well put together movie. Especially the second half. The second half really felt like a really high quality movie. The kind of thing that DC haven't done yet, or succeeded with their comic book adaptations. But they've actually succeeded this time, and I hope it just gets better throughout. There's two more DC animated comic book movies we're expecting to see this year. One's going to be a Superman one, and the other one's going to be a Justice League one. So I'm actually looking really, really forward to actually seeing those movies, and if they come out and if they've impressed me enough, I'll actually give you guys a review of those movies as well. If they're just like regular sort of standard DC animated comic book movies, I may consider doing a review, but The Dark Knight Returns Part 1 and 2 impressed me so much that I had to give you guys a review right now. So, thank you guys very much for watching. This has been Eric from ecartman12.blogspot.com. Please thumbs up, comment and subscribe on this review, and since this is my first movie review in a really, really long time, please let me know what you actually thought about it, and how I could improve. Thank you for watching. I'll see you all in the next video.
Is he dead?